Support for this podcast comes from Frito-Lay and the 2023 Snack Bracket Championship. The Frito-Lay Snack Challenge is underway, and fans are voting on their favorite snacks to crown champion. We're talking about prime-time matchups between the best 64 snacks in the land. Will Ruffles Ridges reign supreme? Can Doritos defend their dynasty? Or will Smart Food use their smarts for a surprise upset? Only you can decide. Get in on all the action for a chance to win up to $1,000 or a year's worth of snacks. Let your snacks be heard. Just go to fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com to vote and enter for a chance to win. No purchase necessary. Sweepstakes ends April 3rd, 2023. Void where prohibited. Year's worth of snacks awarded in the form of 52 coupons, each good for one bag of chips. See official rules at fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com.
This is the Black and Gold Banneret podcast. Now, here are your hosts, Jeff Sharon and Eric Lopez.
Welcome to the Black and Gold Banneret podcast. Jeff Sharon, Bryson Turner here with you, and happy holidays from all of us here at Black and Gold Banneret. We got a little holiday treat for you today. Bryson and I have the distinct pleasure of putting together a really cool interview, one that I've wanted to do for a long time. And Bryson, you worked really hard on it. It's a special interview show that we have for you today for the holiday with former UCF football head coach, Mike Kruczek. Of course, many of us, I know that Mike was the head coach at UCF when I was a student. He came to UCF after a career as an NFL quarterback, originally from Washington, D.C., went to college at Boston College, was drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers, of course, was known for helping the Steelers get through a real injury-riddled 1976 season. It finished his playing career, actually played for 4 seasons in Pittsburgh from 76 to 79, backing up Terry Bradshaw. Won a couple of Super Bowl rings with the Steelers at that time. Finished his career with Washington in 1980, and then went into coaching initially as a quarterbacks coach at Florida State, coached in the USFL, and then came to UCF all the way back in 1985 as an offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach under Gene McDowell, and then stayed there until 1997 when he was promoted to head coach after Gene McDowell resigned. Was head coach at UCF until 2003, so 19 years at UCF. Mike Kruczek, of course, also coached with the Arizona Cardinals, and then later with the in the UFL with the California Redwoods, who eventually became the Sacramento Mountain Lions, and has been the head coach at Trinity Prep here in the Orlando area since 2013. And initially, Bryson, we got the interview to talk to Coach Kruczek about the Holler brothers, Alec and Max. And, fortunately, we were able to, he gave us more than an hour and a half of his time, and was extremely gracious and just an absolute blast to talk to. This was my first extended interview with Coach Kruczek after all these years. I'm glad, and I'm thankful for the legwork that you did to try and get him on the show. But it's kind of cool how this all came together. And I should note one other thing as well. We recorded this earlier this month,
December 13th, I believe.
December 13th. Yeah. Prior to the news that came down that one of Coach Kruczek's beloved teammates with the Pittsburgh Steelers, Franco Harris, Hall of Fame running back, passed away. He passed away on the 21st. And so, and of course, that comes as a shock to a lot of people in the football world, including Mike, we're sure. So I just wanted to note that because we do talk about Franco and the Steelers a little bit, and this was prior to Franco's untimely passing. But nonetheless, we're very fortunate to have Mike on the show, Bryson, and you got the legwork done, man. It was, but it was pretty cool how it all came together.
It was really cool. Like you said, at the time, because we recorded this on December 13th, so this was just on the heels of Alec Holler announcing that he was going to be coming back for another season, and with the plays that he'd been making, he was kind of the toast of UCF at that point, with not only the Holler Hop, but also the Holy Holler, which beautiful play names, by the way. And even off the interview, Kruczek and I were talking about that a little bit. and of course the influences that he had for coaching, not only with coaching with Dante Culpepper, but of course the influences he had from the great Steelers teammates like Terry Bradshaw, and of course the late great Franco Harris. It was absolutely amazing to get a chance to sit down and talk to him with you. I mean, with you as someone who, was born during Kruczek's tenure as head coach. It was really amazing.
Oh, thanks for aging me. Great.
Well, hey, it was really great to learn about UCF, within that time. It was great to learn because we know Dante Culpepper's story. He came back with the program this year. And so to kind of learn from Kruczek's side about all that was amazing to hear. And of course, having you with me, I think it's because you're much more knowledgeable at that time because you were there. And so it was a great what I love about interviews like this is that you learn a lot of things. And that's why we talk for so long, is because there's just so much to learn from Coach Kruczek and about his time as a coach, whether it is coaching the Knights themselves or coaching who would be future Knights in the Holler Brothers. So yeah. I can't wait for you. I'm so glad that you guys will be able to finally get a chance to hear this, since it's considering in IRL for us, it's been about a week since we recorded this. So I'm excited for you guys to hear what he had to say.
Yeah. Well, this was fun. And I'm really thankful for Coach Kruczek and his time. And I think I hope you guys enjoy listening to this, especially those of us who, followed UCF football during the Kruczek era, as much as we enjoyed participating in it. And for those of you who are newer fans who, came along after the era of Coach Kruczek, I hope you guys also, enjoy some of the stories, because there's a lot of familiar names that Coach Kruczek coached here, especially, when we talk about some of the NFL guys that came through UCF in his time, a really remarkable list of names that he came through. So what a great story. What a great interview. And thanks once again to Coach Kruczek for his time and insight and honesty, and just a genuine dude, and one of my favorite people in all of sports to talk to. So here, without further ado, is our interview with former UCF head football coach, Mike Kruczek. Joining us now, a guy who I've wanted to talk to for a long time. We finally have him on the show. Of course, he spent 18 years at UCF as initially the quarterbacks coach and offensive coordinator, and then later the head coach. Put through a lot of players into the NFL from UCF, and of course, for the last decade, has been the head coach at Trinity Prep, where he has seen a fair number of UCF players come and go his way as well. A familiar face and a familiar name to a lot of UCF fans, including myself. When I was a student, he was the head coach, and I'm glad to be talking with him again. Mike Kruczek joining us here on the Black and Gold Banneret podcast. Happy holidays, Coach. Merry Christmas. How are you?
Happy holidays to you too, Jeff. I'm doing fantastic. I really am.
It's good to see you. You look great, but I guess, we know the stories, right? But I think some of our audience, as time goes by, we tend to forget a lot of the history that goes on with UCF. And you were there for so many incredible moments that led to where we are now. And it's such an interesting time in the history of UCF. But, your initial claim to fame as a player was playing for the Pittsburgh Steelers as a quarterback behind Terry Bradshaw. And, you originally from the Washington, D.C. area, but you went to school at Boston College. So let's pick it up there. How does a guy from BC end up playing alongside the famed Steel Curtain and all those Hall of Famers during the Pittsburgh Steelers Super Bowl run?
Great question. Sometimes I still wonder why. But I was blessed to be drafted in the second round, and they had Bradshaw and they had Terry Hanratty from Notre Dame and Joe Gilliam. I mean, they had a quarterback room that was very talented. So I was trying to question as to where I'm going to fit in this whole thing. But Coach Noel being Coach, know how to plan, and everything kind of worked out pretty well. I played a lot as a rookie, had some great memories, played with some unbelievable guys, incredible character people, talent. And went on to do some really, really good things as a team. So I was very, very blessed to play with the best, and perhaps maybe the best that's ever been assembled in pro football.
In 1976, you had to step in for Terry Bradshaw, and you won all 6 of your starts. And there was a moment there when I think Chuck Noll and probably the papers in Pittsburgh at the time thought, gee, this Kruczek guy might be giving us something that Terry might not. Take us back to that moment in your career when you suddenly find yourself, as the starting quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers, and winning ball games and keeping them in a position to get to the playoffs in a season that was a very difficult season for that. I think a lot of people forget that in 1976, it was right after they won their first 2 of 4 Super Bowls, and a lot of injuries at the time, but you kept the raft afloat.
Well, again, just tremendously blessed to be a part of this whole team. It was the 5th game of the year. We were playing Cleveland, who's our arch rival, I'll put it that way, up in Cleveland. And I hadn't played a snap up until that point. Got very few reps in practice. I was always running scout team. Only had 2 quarterbacks. Coach No got rid of Terry Hanratty and Joe Gilliam, so it was just Terry and I. So he goes down. Turkey Jones slams him into the turf, and I thought he was very, very, very seriously hurt. And you've got 80,000 fans in Municipal Stadium, the old Cleveland Stadium, going crazy because now they've put out the star guy. But I got in and we went down and scored. I think we went 80 yards for a touchdown, but it was too little too late. We got beat. So we ended up being 1-4. And I think it really, and I say this because I had very little to do with, except manage a football game, to do with these victories. During my time as a quarterback, the defense woke up. I mean, when you go down across the defensive line, the linebackers in the secondary, they're all Hall of Fame people. They had 5 shutouts during that period of time. It was unheard of. I mean, all you had to do was kick a field goal. So Chuck knew that. We kept the ball on the ground. We had Rocky and Franco and 2,000-yard rushers and Swan Stallworth outside, Frank Lewis. Just a great football team. And I think with Terry getting hurt really woke everybody up and say, listen, we just got finished beating Dallas in the Super Bowl, and now we're 1-4. We got to do something down this stretch, and we did. So it was great to be a part of that whole thing. Probably the biggest memories of my life come from that season, along with being a part of the Super Bowl team and the experience, the winning the game, after being in the Super Bowl.
There's a lot of mystique that still surrounds that team and those Pittsburgh teams to this day, winning 4 Super Bowls in 6 years. But when you think of your personal interactions with guys like Lynn Swan, John Stallworth, Franco Harris, Rocky Blyer, guys on the defense like Mean Joe Green, Mel Blount, and L.C. Greenwood, what are some of the things that you recall the most about, just being in the locker room with those guys who folks like us lionize for their achievements on the field?
Well, first of all, they were tremendously supportive, when I had to step in and play. I mean, I can't say enough about these guys' character and believing in me and encouraging me. Not everything went great, but they were always had my back. And you're talking about the best of the best. And I idolize those guys too now. I mean, I was in college watching them win Super Bowls when I was at BC, and then all of a sudden now I'm thrust into playing with these guys, and they're just regular guys. They're just, I don't know that I can say it any different. Team had tremendous belief in the collective talent of the group, and regardless of who had to step up and play, that was going to happen. And I remember being in the huddle, and I'd throw a pass to Swanee, and he'd drop the ball, and he'd come back, and I'd joke with him. I'd go, listen, you catch Bradshaw's balls, why don't you catch mine? I mean, it was kind of that way. I didn't seem to miss a beat from college, and the confidence and attitude going into an NFL huddle, especially the Steeler huddle, and obviously having the success we did have. But when you have a defense that stout during that time, it was easy to win games. And we did. We won the next 6 games. I think we ended up 10-4 that year going into the playoff game against the Colts.
Yep, 9 in a row to finish out the regular season that year.
Which is kind of a hard thing to do.
Yeah.
So it went really, really well, and it was really a special time.
Go ahead, Bryson.
You mentioned, of course, I mean, Jeff mentioned a lot of the names, and of course, Terry Bradshaw among them as well. That's Hall of Fame talent up the wazoo on that entire team.
Yes,
so how did playing with them, with so many people that are now enshrined in Canton, impact you coaching wise and how you approach coaching a football team?
Well, I think that they had an impact, obviously, but you're talking about an elite group of guys, talent-wise, personality-wise, character-wise. But really, Chuck Noll had a big impact on my coaching career. He was this sounds funny, he was the quarterback coach. He was an offensive lineman for the Browns when he played. Mm-hmm. So he handled the quarterback meetings. And the quarterbacks, at least for the Steelers in those days, called plays for themselves. It wasn't signaled in. There was no head mic. There was nothing. So he did a great job on the mental aspect of approach of the game and how we down and distance teams. And that had a great effect on who I was as I moved along out of playing into my coaching career. So, but they all had, work ethic wise and watching practice on the field and how hard they went. They understood that the way you practice is the way you're going to play. There was no time off. And in those days, unlike today, and I'm not saying it's bad, I mean, we were going live on Tuesdays and Wednesdays and Thursdays. I mean, it was pads and we were hitting each other. Whereas today, people are worried about injury and this and that. They kind of tag off and all that. Not that the hitting has dropped off, but it was a different time, very special time. So, but it all had a big impact on my career being with that organization.
Yeah, it is a lot different. Okay, but you got to answer me one question here, Coach Kruczek. Mm-hmm. How does a guy who calls his own plays for the Pittsburgh Steelers somehow not throw a touchdown pass?
Okay. Glad you asked that question. Terry Bradshaw called his own plays. I did not. So, and now let me clarify this stuff. Now, I knew this question was going to come up. I think I was 51 of 84, whatever. I had more pass completions stopped on the 1 yard line than you can believe in.
I was going to say, because I looked on YouTube and I found some highlights with John Facenda narrating them and all from NFL Films. And there must have been 3 or 4 of them where Stallworth got pulled down at the 1 or something. I'm like, how did they not get in? This is unbelievable. Yeah.
Again, it's not about statistics with me, although, I supposedly had this a good career playing quarterback with the Steelers and never threw a touchdown. It's about winning games. Franco had an incredible year. Obviously, once we cut down inside the 5, we were running the football. So, and I knew that, and I was fine with all that. My job was just to get them down there to try and assist and, work out the game plan and execute. So it was all good. Not throwing a touchdown. As I think back, golly, I mean, you had a lot of snaps. It just didn't work out.
Well, you played 5 years. You finished your NFL career with 1 year in Washington, playing back in your home in your hometown. You actually did start a game in Washington. I think it was in Dallas. Is that right?
No.
Oh, it wasn't. Okay.
Joe Theismann got hurt probably at the end of the third quarter, and I went in to play. It may have been sooner. My start was against the Falcons.
Okay.
They were a playoff team that year. And, we got beat by a few points, but they were a pretty good football team. Steve Barkowski was a quarterback at the time. I think it was obviously 1980. So it was an interesting time, when I look back and I compare the two teams and the personalities and my experiences, it was just different in Washington than it was with Chuck Noll and the rest of those guys in Pittsburgh. I was under Pardee. Now, I wasn't underneath Gibbs. So it was Jack's last year as a head coach at Washington.
Right. So then your pro career as a player comes to an end, but then you go into you decide to go into coaching. So how does an NFL quarterback with 2 Super Bowl rings land with a Division II school in Florida?
Well, I have to start before I got to UCF, because the reason why I ended up at UCF was because of an individual I coached with. In '82, Coach Bowden hired me to coach the quarterbacks at Florida State. I got down there Valentine's Day, 1982 in February, and worked there 2 years and made some great acquaintances with the coaching staff, in particular Gene McDowell, who eventually became the head coach, as we know, at UCF. I left there and went to the Jacksonville Bulls to go back out and play in 1984 with Lindy Infante, who was voted, coach of the year for the Packers. He's been around, did a great job. He was another mentor offensively that I had. But I was only there 1 year, and then Gene called me about coming down to UCF. Now, this was before, it was like 84 December. And I said, okay, because I'll let you run the offense and we'll get this thing going. I didn't do any research on UCF. Facilities, nothing. And I can remember driving on campus. I remember the day. It was January 5th. And it was a gloomy Sunday. And we had a meeting that day, our first staff meeting. And I'm going, what did you get yourself involved with coming down here? I'm serious. The facilities were non-existent. They were before you got to school, obviously. And I remember the meeting room and how crowded it was. People don't have a clue about where that school came from as compared to where it is right now. So that's how I ended up down there. Let me coordinate and coach the quarterbacks, and spent 19 years there. So he was very influential in my career too. Although he was a defensive guy, he never got in my business as an offensive coach. So it was nice.
But it was kind of a good laboratory for you as a coach, right? Because I that's what I kind of liked about, even all those years later as a student, we kind of had this, because there was this sort of chip on your shoulder mentality of, that comes with that. You had a lot of opportunities to, try some new things. And, if something didn't work, okay, we'll try something else, right? There was I don't want to say that there wasn't pressure, but there certainly wasn't the kind of pressure that you would see at a place like Florida or Florida State at the time, right?
No, you're absolutely correct. Really was. We had a heck of a schedule, considering the lack of a budget that we had. There was absolutely none. And we were able to attract some really quality athletes because they just wanted to play football. They back in those days, they really weren't interested in facilities and, being recognized. So we got considering what we didn't have to offer except an education and a chance to play, some really good football players. And I can remember 1986, going into 87, I lined up 5 wide receivers without huddling for 4 or 5 games. 4 running backs. You talked about Giacone and those guys, Elgin Davis and Aaron Sams. We had some really good running backs, and I just went 5 wides and let's go, throw the ball. I obviously changed later on, but so you're right. It was a laboratory to experiment on things to give us a chance to beat the teams we were playing.
Well, that was going to be my next question, because a couple of years ago, I did speak to Darren Slack, and he told me about the one team meeting that you had where you guys had gotten off to a slow start. And everyone was kind of looking around the room saying, this is a talented team. What's wrong? And you walked into the meeting room, took the binder in your hand and threw it in the trash and said, this is going away. This is what we're going to do. And that's kind of where, at least according to that story, the 5 wide scheme kind of was born out of almost necessity. Can you give us a little bit more insight into how that all went down?
Well, actually, it started at the end of '86. Obviously, Darren was starting at the time, and we had won. But I saw a lot of potential in that scheme that was created, and it was really simplistic in communicating things, which is essential as far as success. And so I continued it into 87, and I think that I remember the occasion where I don't know what I threw in the trash, but I told him, I said, listen, we're out of this plan. We're gonna go to empty and just throw it around the park a little bit. And Darren, very smart guy, mechanically very sound, had some really talented wide receivers, and it gave people problems. I mean, it really did. Now, you had to be sound in your protections because it's only a 5-man protection, so they can make you hot a lot if they're smart. So we had to work through that aspect of things, because really in practice, we never worked on being hot, but there was a hot guy involved with the route. So it was evolutionary for us, and it was nice to have at the time. I know Darren had fun executing the plan. So,
and that I think was the nexus of you being, developing a reputation that you got throughout your career as a coach, especially at UCF, as an offensive innovator, because and I can't help but think like how different the character was of it to go, 5 wides and empty from a guy who played, who lined up as a player in front of Rocky Blyer and Franco Harris, right? I mean, it's kind of interesting how that worked. But what did you, when you really break down your offensive philosophy, what was really at the core of it, and how did you develop it over the course of nearly 2 full decades at UCF?
It was really the influence of a number of people that I spoke about. I talked about Chuck. Now we were a 2-back, 2-receiver tight end team. We were 21 personnel all the way. So that was a different time in football. Everybody was basically that way. Mm-hmm. As I evolved with Coach Infante. Now he was with the Bengals when they were in the Super Bowl, and he was more of 11 personnel, 3 receivers, tight end, and a back. Now we never went to empty. However, my knowledge expanded by being around him and how he called things and how he communicated things and how he coached it. And then I went to UCF, and I just looked at and evaluated the talent and going, you know what, we got guys on the bench that can make plays. We got to get them in the game. How do you do that? Well, so we came up with this 5 wideout thing, and it worked for a long time. And then we eventually went back with Darren Henshaw later on. We were more 2-back, but we always had that plan, the ability to do that. So it's I don't know that anybody specifically had an influence on doing it, but I know that Coach Noel, Coach Infante, Coach Bowden was a 2-back guy too now when we were there. And but he was more of a mentor about life, and it wasn't so much about the X's and O's. It was about how to treat players and cultivate relationships, and he was incredible that way. So it's I was tremendously blessed to be around some really great guys that helped form who I am, and it worked out.
Another one of those guys I'm sure helped form who you were as a coach was your boss, Gene McDowell, at the time. We lost Gene last January of 2021. What did Gene mean to you?
Well, first of all, we were very competitive with each other. When I was there, I was a big weightlifter, but I was an extremely talented racquetball player. And he thought he was a good racquetball player. And so we would play 3 days a week in the off season. And I don't think he ever beat me, but he would get so mad. So this carried on going into UCF. So he had a vision for this program that I bought into when I got on campus, because I saw what he went through and the sacrifices he made. He allowed me to be me and not try and handcuff what we did, which I've always been tremendously thankful for and appreciative of. But he is, and I'll say it on this air, he's Mr. UCF. I know there's been a lot of people do some things, but when a guy takes $1 salary for the entire year because there's no money in the budget, you've got coaches working for Burger King receipts to get a Whopper, I mean, it was amazing how he was able to hold that thing together and then raise money to try and, sustain the program as it moved along. So his work ethic and is willing to sacrifice a lot really helped mold me.
Today's episode is brought to you by Cars.com. With over 2 million vehicles and 50,000 more added every day, Cars.com will match you with the perfect car for you, your budget, your life, your style. And if you're ready to say goodbye to your current car, Cars.com will get you an instant offer to cash it in. Just start by entering your license plate and get matched with a local dealer who will write you the check. So whether you're looking to buy or sell, just go to Cars.com. It's magical.
Through the 80s, you guys moved up from D2 to 1AA, now FCS. Had incredible success there, building up to that win at Youngstown State over Jim Tressel, I believe, was the head coach at the time.
He was.
And it's still one of the most dramatic victories, I think, in UCF history that is easily forgotten because it was in like the before times. It was 1990.
Oh, yeah.
But tell us about that victory over Youngstown State in that cold weather. Franco Grillo makes the field goal to win it at the end, but it was your guys' offense that kind of controlled the game and put UCF in a position to win that game.
You know what's funny? We went up there. They take the 16 top teams in the playoffs. They were 1, we were 16. And nobody expected us, especially with the weather being so frigid, for us to win. And all I did was run the ball. And I kept hearing, because I'm up in the box, you're going to have to throw the ball. You're going to have to throw the ball. No. We maintained possession of the ball by running it, a little bit of play action, quick game stuff. And one of the most memorable games I've ever been associated with, because nobody gave us any chance to win the game. Yet we go up there in front of a packed stadium, Hall of Fame coach, a great football team, and win the game. So it was, and Franco, to me, is one of the greatest kickers that ever kicked at UCF. I mean, he was unbelievable. So he was money for us. We got he was clutch. He was very, very clutch.
So after that, in comes a quarterback we all know, Dante Culpepper. You coached him for 4 seasons. Describe to us, because I wasn't alive for that to happen, or at least wasn't alive long enough to really see him play. And so, can you just describe about he recently came back to UCF and spoke with the team and kind of described it, but from your perspective, describe kind of who Dante was as a player and as a person and what he meant to this program.
Well, you really have to understand his background to really understand who Pep is. And by the way, I am elated that he came back to UCF. I had a chance to coach him in his last professional game in the UFL with Denny Green in Sacramento. Going back to the recruiting process, Paul Lounsbury did an incredible job of monitoring Dante, giving him a plan to get eligible to get into college. And Dante is an extremely loyal guy. Everybody else fell off the wagon because they said, well, he's not going to make it. He's not going to make it. So they quit communicating with him, which I think upset Dante. But he came down to 4 games. It was unofficial. He drove down. He was raised by his adopted mother, Emma, who was, I always say, she's tougher than battery acid. She was a tough lady, but what a mother she was to him. And he was, because he's who he is because of who she is, but loyal, hardworking, tremendous character guy, never got in trouble, went to class, just everything you want as a football player. And I gave him every chance. We gave him every chance. I trying to put him in a position to be successful. Obviously, he had a tremendous career. Moving into the 1A level was a tough thing. FBS level that Jeff talked about when we got there. We're playing some pretty good football teams, but the games were always competitive because of his athletic ability, and everybody raised their playing level simply because of who he was. Great guy. You never know he played football. Just a tremendous athlete. But the greatest thing about Pep was his confidence. There wasn't a thing you could say to him that he said, I can do that. I can do that. I can remember at practice one day, he's a freshman, and obviously he's starting, and we had backups in practice, and he's standing next to me and goes, Coach, I can do a backflip. Now, we're in full equipment. I said, Pep, you probably can, but don't do it. I turned around, I look, and the feeder, his head's at the ground, and the feet are going over the top. Standing backflip, full equipment. I got tons of stories about telling him he can't do it. Well, guess what? Yeah, he can. So that's the way he approached life and the game, and obviously had a tremendous career. And I'll say this, if he hadn't tore his knee up when he was at Minnesota, he may have gone down as one of the best ever played the game. It just never recovered for him. So the thing I'm most proud of him is he's come back to UCF. You know, he got away from there for a long, long time. So he's a big face of that program, regardless of what anybody says.
Yeah, I mean, I still think that's true. We here at UCF, it's his place is secure. It's funny you mentioned that one story about the backflip, because I actually had a buddy of mine in the radio business, actually way back in the day, told me a good story about him that I think you'll appreciate. When he was a student at UCF, he took a team sports survey class. I think it might have been taught by Torchy back in the day. Yeah, but he said every class they would play a different sport, right? So it'll be flag football one day, it'll be softball another, whatever. He said there was no sport Dante wasn't good at, because we would go out there play soccer. On this one particular day, he would be flipping the ball back and forth between his feet, dribbling the soccer ball like he was Cristiano Ronaldo, like weaving in and out of traffic. We go play golf. He would drive the ball 300 yards. We almost talk about Dante like he was Bo Jackson. That documentary about Bo, where they talk about all these crazy stories about him, like how incredible of a figure he was. And I think Dante was sort of the same way in a way.
He was our Bo Jackson.
Yeah.
He really was. And we were at a time where we really needed somebody. To get him was huge for this program as far as pushing it along and the success it had going into where it is right now. So it was an honor to coach him. It really was. Just a great, great, great guy, as you know.
Yeah. His final season, 1998, 9-2, and barely miss out on a bowl game as a 1A independent at the time, which, everyone likes to talk about how many bowl games there are. There weren't that many back then. And you guys came so painfully close to going to, I believe, the Hawaii Bowl at the time. Tell us about that season and the run that you guys went on, and how close it came. Like, what were the dominoes that fell that kept you guys out of, grabbing that brass ring for the first time?
Well, that season will live in my memory for forever. We opened up the season at Louisiana Tech, and Tim Rattay was a quarterback, and had a kid named, I think it was Brown, that got drafted by the Steelers, and Rattay got drafted. They had a tremendous year in '97, so we opened up out there, and this is my first game that happens to be on the road.
Mm-hmm.
We end up winning 64-30, and Pep throws 4 touchdowns. I mean, he's just, and I knew I never went into a game not knowing that we couldn't win the game in the 4 years he was there. That'll say enough. It's all about the quarterback. Then we play Purdue up there, and Joe Tiller was the head coach at the time. And I remember talking to him before the game. He goes, "Hey, coach, I'll trade you my team for yours." I go, "Coach, I think I'm going to hold on to my guys." Well, Drew Brees was his quarterback at the time. So we're playing in the game. We are up and down the field. We turned the ball over 3 times inside their 5-yard line. The only time I ever got upset at Dante, it was 4th down and 2 feet on the goal line, and I had a quarterback sneak call. Now, I always gave him the freedom to check. I should have gone, no check, no check. He checks to a pass, incomplete. They take the ball. So we don't score. We get down there again. He throws a pass. It goes through Charles Lee's hands. He's picked off on the 8 yards in the end zone, and they run it back for a touchdown. It was a ridiculous game. And we had more yards than they had, but they beat us up substantially. After that, we went on this run, and we had a chance, and we gave this away against Auburn.
Auburn, yeah.
And if we win the game, we don't go to Hawaii. We go to freaking the Liberty Bowl against Tulane, who's undefeated.
Yeah,
Sean King.
Yep.
So we go in the game, and it really is on me. Dante had only thrown 3 interceptions up to that point. Now, mind you, this is the 9th or 10th game of the year, and he throws 4 interceptions. Defense, I had hired Chizik that year as a defensive coordinator, was lights out against that team. They couldn't move the ball an inch. And and we had things open. It just, for some reason, we missed it. I should have run the ball more. But we're up 6-3 in the 4th quarter. They get a holding call on 3rd down and 10, right? Mm-hmm. They're in their territory. Time's running down. I decline the penalty, make it 4th and 10. Coach Chiz comes with a corner blitz, a cat, with the linebacker that side. And we don't fit it out, and he hits the hot. So he throws a 5-yard hitch. Our safety misses, and he goes 60 yards for a touchdown. Yeah. We get the ball back with a minute something, and we're not able to drive down. So we lose 10-6. Unheard of. And that game will always be in my mind too, because then there won't be any noise about, well, they didn't go to bowl game until this year and that year. You can say what you want. During my years, out of the 6 years I coached there, we would have been in a bowl game 4 times based on today's standards. But that season was fantastic, except for that Auburn game. So that'll live with me for a long time.
It was the first year of the BCS, if I'm not mistaken.
It was.
And the way it worked out, Kansas, I think it was Miami, was playing UCLA in the Orange Bowl in a game that was delayed because of a hurricane. They were supposed to play it in September. Right. It got moved back. So, and then Miami upsets Cade McNown and UCLA at that time, and Edgerrin James, I think, ran for 300 yards in that game.
It was absurd.
Yeah, and then later that day, and I think the second or third Big 12 championship game, Texas A&M knocks off number 2 Kansas State, a team with I think it was Michael Bishop was on Kansas State at the time. They were really good. Yep. They get knocked off by, I remember Sir Parker scored the touchdown in overtime to win, and that drops everybody down a peg and knocks you guys out of a bowl game, which looking back on is like, you got to be kidding me how that all went down. And now we have 58 bowl games that we could have gone to. It would have been a layup nowadays. Well,
it is. Half the time they're looking for teams that are 500 to try and get to fill these bowl spots.
Right.
They weren't enough bowl games back then, and rightfully so. I mean, it has to be something that you earn, and they get guys in the bowl that are 5-7 because they can't get enough teams to play in it. So that was the times, and that's the way it goes. And but we had some good teams. We had some great players and some great moments.
I want to do a little rapid fire with you here, if it's okay. All right. What was your, if I have to force you to pick one, is 1998 your best team or favorite team at UCF?
Yes.
Okay. What was your favorite game that you ever coached at UCF?
Oh Lord, favorite game. That's a tough question.
I got a lot of them. If you
no, that's good. Possibly the first one against Louisiana Tech, simply because it was my first one, and we never expected to beat this team by 34 points the way we did.
Yeah.
With a fairly new staff, a new defensive coordinator, obviously a new head coach. That sticks in my mind. As a head coach, yes, that probably was one of the biggest. 2002 was a special year too with Snyder at quarterback. We did some really, really good things. Not enough credits given to him and the group that played that year with Doug Gabriel and Gaines and the guys that we had playing on the team at the time. They kind of get lost in the shovel. But the Louisiana Tech was probably the most memorable game for me right now because, again, it was the first game I had coached in.
Yeah. I'm going to get to 2002 in a second too, but I want to give you an opportunity to give us a little name association. I'm going to say a name.
Okay.
And you give us one or two words about those particular players or people that I mentioned. You ready?
I'm going to try.
All right, here we go. Doug Gabriel.
Confident. Tremendously talented physically.
Asante Samuel.
Again, I'm going to use the word tremendously confident, incredibly instinctive.
Jimmy Frizzell.
Tenacious, overachieving, and again, someone that believed in his own ability to play.
Vic Penn.
1999. I'm going to use the word, geez. I don't have one word to describe him. He came in a situation where he was a JC quarterback and had to learn how to drop back and pass because he was a sprint quarterback in JC out of Miami, and would far surpass anything I thought he could do during that season. Now, again, I'm going past what you allowed me to say.
That's okay.
But when you consider he had to start against Purdue at home, second game, go to Florida. The next game, play Georgia Tech.
Mm-hmm.
The next game, play Georgia.
Oh, don't get me started on that Georgia game.
Well, yeah. And then Auburn later on during the season. So a remarkable job by him. Again, I think he had great confidence in his own ability to play and had a lot of athleticism. He was fast. He could throw the ball. So we were very fortuitous to get him when we did after Dante left.
Javier Berlegui.
Clutch.
Yeah.
He did a great job. I mean, when you punt and you kick, that's a talent.
Yeah, I mean, you don't see guys who pull double duty like that anymore.
No, they specialize in just one skill. But he did a tremendous job the years he was there, and obviously the kick at Alabama was huge. But he made a lot of big kicks. The Georgia game was unfortunate. He was sick the night before, and but his career was phenomenal.
Darren Hinshaw.
Studious, talented, motivated, intelligent, and tremendously competitive.
Matt Prater.
I just watched him last night.
I know.
I'm going to say unique. and I'll say it from this standpoint. We had never scholarshiped a kicker coming out of high school in the years I was at UCF, not as an assistant, not as a head coach. And he was that talented coming out of the Naples area down there. I think it was Estero. Yep. And to last like he's done right now is a credit to him and keeping his body in shape, and always had a tremendous leg. You know, remember Penn State, his first field goal was 52 yards.
Yeah.
In the opener. And again, another kid that UCF benefited from that someone overlooked.
I remember he was, because I was a student at the time as a student reporter. I remember seeing at the time he was in a competition with Ryan Feely, who's the little brother of Jay Feely.
Right.
And we thought, well, Feely, right? I mean, he's a Feely. He's probably going to be pretty good. And he beat him out. And we're like, this guy Prater must be something. And then he hit that 53-yarder at Penn State in Happy Valley in front of 110,000 people. And you're like, man,
like
we got something here. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And he ended up our punter.
Right.
We were rugby style back then, trying to protect him, let him, because the swing is different when you punt and you kick. Mm-hmm. Obviously, when you're soccer style, you sweep across it. When you punt, your legs straight up and down. So we said, well, let's put the rugby punt in and let him hit it. And he did a tremendous job doing that. So.
All right. I got three really good ones for you coming up. Okay.
Oh, you've had some good ones now.
Rick Stockstill.
My buddy. A critical piece that people don't understand how important he was to the program. A tremendous recruiter. He was a player's guy. I mean, did a great job with the receivers. I mean, when you consider he coached Sean Jefferson, he coached Sean Beckton. I mean, it was a who's who. Bernard Ford, you look through the receiver records at UCF, he had a bunch of them, but it was his personality and character that separated him from a lot of coaches. Just a phenomenal guy, and he hasn't changed to this day. And he's had a tremendous career at Middle Tennessee. Stay in touch with him quite often. So,
yeah, he's been the head coach at Middle Tennessee since 2006, still going.
Have you ever talked to him?
I haven't. He's on my list. He's on my list of guys to talk to. But
you need to call him.
I gotta get him.
He'll tell you about the times back when we started. He was on the staff when we came to UCF in 2005. Gene hired all the young guys from Florida State, mm-hmm. right? That wanted to coach.
Yep.
Gene knew that he didn't have to pay him a lot of money. But he'll tell you some stories that'll be hysterical.
You mentioned a couple of those wide receivers you were talking about. Sean Jefferson.
There you go. Extremely proud of Sean. I mean, here's another kid that was extremely athletically talented, incredibly confident in his ability to do things, and just came up big in games. You see him in Hard Knocks. You watch him on the sideline with the Cardinals. You know about his son. That's who Sean was. And he didn't have the easiest upbringing either. So he overcame a lot to get to where he's at. And that's a credit to him and his belief in his ability and God that, things will work out. So it was great to have Sean. I could tell you stories, but I can't say it.
Sean Beckton.
He was Mr. Consistent. He did everything well. He could catch, run, throw, punt, return. I mean, he did everything. Smart, intelligent, diligent, hardworking, great work ethic. Always in class. Never had to worry about it. Great guy.
All right, I got two more, and these are good ones. And you mentioned him earlier. Ryan Schneider.
Very, very confident. Played with a chip on his shoulder because no one recruited him. Mm-hmm. And he was a 7A player of the year. I forget what A it was, but he was a player of the year in Plantation.
Yep, Plantation.
And I couldn't believe we got him as late as we got him. Productive, smart. I think his biggest quality is just toughness.
He
would
was
get
a
hit.
tough cookie, man.
Oh,
Oh,
he was off the charts tough. I mean, he took some vicious hits and get right back up. He'd be looking through his ear hole. Are you all right? Oh, yeah, I'm fine. I mean, I can remember the Alabama game, and we get the ball back on that drive where Boleggy kicked the field goal. He comes to the sideline, and it's like 55 seconds left. He goes, Coach, we got this. And tick, 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 field goal. I mean, that's who he was. That's how he played the game.
that Alabama game, and I do have to ask you. I mean, I'm guessing that's the part that you remember the most is that final drive.
It is, and I mentioned Louisiana Tech, but this is how old I'm getting. The Alabama game had to be the highlight of my coaching career at UCF. I mean, we had come so close over a number of years. We lost to Ole Miss in overtime when Gene was the head coach, and I had the perfect play called and had a quarterback draw, and Dante doesn't take 3 steps. I should have been in the gun. He takes a step and a half, and he starts forward. I emptied the backfield with motion, and they were in 2-man, and there's only a 4-man rush, and he gets stopped a foot before he got to the goal line. Mississippi State's the same thing that year. You know, Nebraska was a good game. We just ran out of steam in the second half. We just didn't have enough players. You know, Penn State, we lost 27-24 where we had a chance. And then obviously the Auburn game, the Georgia game, and the one you don't think about is Georgia Tech.
Right.
I mean, we throw a reverse pass coming off the goal line, and Kenny Clark's got the ball smoking to the goal line. The guy punches it out, and then they get it and drive it down to score late in the game. And George Godsey was a quarterback at the time for O'Leary.
Right. And O'Leary was that coach, yeah.
Oh, yeah. So there's a number of high-profile games that we played close. So beating Alabama was huge. I mean, especially on homecoming and, you know, Bear Bryant and his legend and beautiful day and great crowd. And kids played incredibly well, tremendously confidently. They never doubted they could win.
Last one for you, last little name association, Brandon Marshall.
Smiley. He and again, I'm going to talk longer than you want.
That's okay.
We recruited Brandon. He was a single wing quarterback at Lake Howell. And he was being recruited by Florida as just like Doug Gabriel. They wanted to play him as free safety. I said, no, man, you're a wide receiver. What are they talking about? So we get him, and I told him back when he was a freshman, I said, listen, if you can get your speed down below 4.6, you're going to make a lot of money in this National Football League. Now, I had him 2 years, I think. Yeah. 2002 and then 2003 after I left.
Right.
And obviously, George moved him and Mike Walker, another one that was extremely talented, to safety. And I was in Arizona with the Cardinals. I'm going, what is he thinking? And then they moved them back, which is where they belonged, obviously, and went on with their careers. But tremendously talented athlete now, basketball player, do everything athletically. Just a happy-go-lucky kid at the time. I really didn't get to spend enough time, unfortunately, with him to really, really get to know him. But played big for us when he had to as a young player.
Yeah. We just recently, I think it was about 10 years ago, the other day was the anniversary of him setting a new NFL record for catches in a game. He had 21 catches.
Oh, yeah. I coached against him when he was at Denver.
Yeah.
Wasn't a lot of fun.
I imagine.
No.
So after your time at UCF ended in 2003, you come back to the NFL, and
Right.
Dennis Green hires you in Arizona.
Right.
What was it like being in the NFL now in the 2000s? You know, some 15 years after you played, it's a different league, right? So what was that like coaching in the NFL at that point?
Well, you know, I only knew the NFL as a player, not as a coach, and what was involved with the coaching aspect of it. Obviously, I'd gone through coaching in college. I loved the National Football League coaching. I mean, I had a tremendous mentor in Denny Green. Absolutely love the guy. Players coach. The schedule was a little different. Obviously, the thing that made it different, other than being in the National Football League, is we're in Arizona. We're freaking in Phoenix, and it's 1,000,000,000 degrees out. So we have to practice at 8:30 in the morning, which means the guys are up lifting weights at 5:30. So, and they're done by, 1:30 in the afternoon. So I had to readjust the schedule, but it was very similar as far as structure is concerned. Perpetual hours as a coach, just what it was. I couldn't have asked for a better location with a better group of guys, with Kurt Warner, Larry Fitzgerald, Edwin James, Anquan Bolden. I mean, it was a joy to have an opportunity to work with those professionals that were not only great athletes, but even better people. So,
Denny Green was also, like you mentioned, but another guy gone too soon.
Oh, I know. He had a circulation issue, and he always walked around the field, to stimulate. He wore those high white stockings to try and keep pressure on his legs. And I was heartbroken when he passed away. Just a tremendous. He and his wife and my wife and myself would go to dinner, 2 or 3 times a year. And fantastic person, incredible musician too, by the way.
Right, he was a really good drummer, wasn't
he? Yeah, Sunset Band. I mean, I have the DVD. I mean, they were very, very. Doc Severinsen played with him.
That's right.
Johnny Carson's old guy. So no, great person to learn under. Players love playing for him. We didn't, in the ownership's mind, win enough games. I think Denny just got a little tired of butting heads with the Bidwells, and he just said, the heck with it. Kind of walked away from it.
The thing that I think about with that time is also, and I'm kind of struck by this, like, can you speak on how the NFL game has also evolved over the years? Because, like I mentioned, you played in the 70s with the Steelers, and there are entire sections of the NFL rulebook that were rewritten because of arguably one guy who was a teammate of yours, Mel Blount, and not to mention all your other defensive teammates on the Steelers team. And then you come to the NFL as a coach, and it's a much more wide open passing league. Describe for us really the different, how the league evolved over that period of time from when you were a player to when you became a coach in the NFL.
Well, I think the inability of the defensive back to get his hands on receivers past 5 yards had a lot to do with opening up the pass game. But the game changed so much more than just that aspect of things. The NFL Players Association got heavily involved with how you structure practice, how much hitting you can do, how many days in pads you can have them in. Off-season training was limited. Now there is none, hardly. Back in the day, our guys were in starting in March, and they were there the whole year, off-season lifting. Now, So there's a lot more control by the Players Association on what can be done and what can't be done. They've cut the preseason down to 3 games.
3 games.
It's something that I had agreed with, to add another game during the season. It means something because that 4th game was nothing. I mean, guys weren't playing anyway.
Right.
It was the same way when I played. Our last preseason game, the year we beat Dallas, was against Dallas, down in Dallas, and they beat us 30-0. I got knocked out on the last play of the game in the end zone. So it was just, they've done some really good things to eliminate injury, and it's all predicated on guys staying healthy. I think that they do a remarkable job now of monitoring the hitting. The game is still a heavy contact sport, obviously, and but they don't work on that skill. You can't see it in the game because you can still see the viciousness of the hits you used to have, but they really control that so that players stay healthy. So the practice has changed tremendously. And philosophically, what they do offensively with the wide receivers and throwing the football has changed, which makes sense to some degree, but you still got to run the football to win. Cut and dry. You can't just drop and throw. It doesn't work. So, and the other issue is the hitting aspect. You talked about my teammates. I played with Mike Webster.
Yeah.
What happened to him had a dramatic effect on what's going on with young football.
No doubt. No doubt.
Parents aren't, they're a little shaken up about all that, about the head injuries and whatnot. But Mike is a unique. He played 17 years. He led with his head every play, So it was just a tremendous guy too. Mike was quiet and tremendously talented guy. He helped Bradshaw call plays. So.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that because, and we'll get more to your experience at Trinity in a little bit, but you deal with that now as a coach, talking with. I imagine you must have a lot of conversations with parents saying, look, I maybe my kid is talented, but I'm concerned about head injuries. How do you approach that?
Well, it's a difficult subject to try and convince parents that the game has changed. Tackling has changed. It's more of a rugby tackle now if you've watched the game. Mm-hmm. The head is not involved with it. Does the head get involved at times? Yeah. Does your head hit the ground, which causes concussion? Yes. And yes, we do have this constant conversation with parents that are very concerned about their children, their sons, getting concussions. But again, Mike and Dewerson and Sayal and the guys that were in the movie were unique, exceptional athletes that, it's especially Mike.
Yeah.
I had just seen him prior to this happening. About 6 months, we had a reunion, and before he passed away. So it's a tough thing for us to overcome because training is a little different in public schools. The motivation for kids are a little bit different now.
Right.
It's not like they need football to get out of the environment they're in. Our kids are a little bit different culturally, so we're up and down with things and always we got kids walking the hallway that can play. It's just trying to convince them and the parents that they need to play this game because it's more unique than any other sport that they can play. And I honestly feel that.
And I'm sure that there's some kids who come to you and they're like, Coach, I would love to play for you, except, X, Y, and Z. And I think I'm interested in how you deal with it as a coach, like with the players that you have, because, I'm sure you've come across many instances where you see a kid take a shot and he comes to you and he's like, Coach, I'm fine. I'll get back in. And you have to be the one to say, no, there's something wrong. And I think you need to get checked out. Come on out. And that's a hard balance to strike, I would imagine, as a coach, because, you're trying to balance the ability to win the game, obviously, with keeping your players safe and healthy.
The number one responsibility I have is keeping players safe. It's not about wins and losses, especially in high school level. The NFL make a big to do with that, obviously, and that's well documented about getting back to Mike Webster in the days in the NFL and said, well, there's no concussions. Well, that's not true. So we're very, very, very cautious about hits. I have a great trainer, and there are signs, after a hit, because we keep an eye on the young man. If he's not on the ground and he gets up and he seems like he's just a little bit disoriented, then we'll sub him and get him off the field. And I am absolutely 100% behind whatever decision's made, because I ultimately make the decision, but the trainer's the one that says he doesn't he can't go back out there. So we've been good with that, and been very fortunate with it. But it is a subject that everybody has to, be a part of if you're a responsibility. My big thing is we don't hit during practice. Well, that's good and bad, because the only time they hit's in the game.
Right.
So that doesn't work out too well. So they do learn in training camp, but after that, it's kind of, thud and touch and all that kind of stuff till the bullets are live on Friday night. A little different than when it was at UCF or whatever. We had a lot of numbers then. I don't have a lot of numbers over Trinity, so
Right.
a little different.
That's a good point. All right, so I want to go back to when your time in the NFL came to a conclusion, but you still kept on coaching for a couple of years. You worked with Matt Ryan, who went to your alma mater, Boston College.
I did.
And also Brady Quinn, who went to your alma mater's rival, Notre Dame, of course.
Right.
And you kind of, dove in as sort of like a quarterback guru for those two guys. What was that like?
It was a lot of fun. It was in Scottsdale, and it was an agent that I had played football with, Tommy Condon.
Mm-hmm.
I played with him at BC, who was representing both of those guys at the time, and he had called me, and both unique guys, different in a lot of ways, but nonetheless dedicated to becoming the best they could be. And we worked 4 days a week, probably 5 hours a day. It was a combination of watching film, talking about schematics and terminologies that they may learn, and then working those on the field. So it was great working with Matt and Brady at the time. So Matt's had a tremendous career. Brady's didn't last quite as long. Brady was a big weight guy. He was slapped together. And I'm not saying Matt didn't train, but he was just a different body type, But I had a lot of fun with those guys. They were great to be around. And then the receivers that were part of the IMG group over there were really good too. So that was nice. I enjoyed my time in Phoenix. I really did.
You talk about Matt Ryan in particular. I had the good fortune of covering the one game that he won at Clemson with a late touchdown pass. I'm sure you recall seeing that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was on the sideline working for a TV station in that area at the time, and thinking, "Oh boy, this guy's as advertised. He's gonna be around a while."
Oh yeah, very, very, very talented guy, and he has been around. He's having a tough year this year. I kind of wish he had stayed in Atlanta, or guys that establish a relationship with a team and their legacy with a team. I've always had an issue about, why would you leave? Montana did it with San Francisco, went to Kansas City. That worked out okay. Namath did it with New York, went to San Diego. I mean, there's hundreds of examples as to why you don't leave. Just retire.
Yeah.
It's said and done, though.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, I always thought, like, if I was ever in that position, I'd be like, you'd have to drag me off that field. I mean, it's because it's such a gift. It really is a gift. And and similar to that, and I wanted to talk to you about this because I thought this was pretty interesting. Denny Green in 2010 brings you back with the Sacramento Mountain Lions of the UFL. Now, there was a team in Orlando, but you coached there for, I believe, 2 years, and you got to coach Dante Culpepper once again in 2010 as he was finishing out his professional playing career with Sacramento. What was that like playing, coaching Dante again 12 years after you had coached him in college? Alongside the coach that he also played for as a professional in Denison, Minnesota. What was that like?
Well, first of all, the UFL was very competitive. It was 3 years, 2009 to 2011, and Dante was with us in 10. To have an opportunity to have a chance to coach Dante alongside his greatest mentor, and Denny Green, meant the world to me, and it did to Denny too. we had a real good season. Now, we didn't win it. We beat the Tuskers twice.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about Gruden and that group that were here, which was a pure joy for me. I got to bet it was. I got to tell you a story now. We're talking.
Go for it.
All right. I talked about the play that I had called against Ole Miss in '97. It was a quarterback draw, right?
Yep, 3-step quarterback draw.
Yeah, I should have had him in the gun, but we were more into the center than in the gun then. Came up short. We got the same situation in the Citrus Bowl against the Tuskers, and it's 4th down. He comes to the sideline with Denny sitting next to me. He goes, "Coach, run the bleeping quarterback draw." And I looked at him, I go, "Really?" He called and scored a touchdown. We won.
Was he like, "I'm taking 3 steps this time"?
Yeah, he was in the gun. No, he wasn't under the center. They had no chance at all. So it was kind of ironic that we were in the same situation, obviously at a different time, with Coach Green and myself, and we're both standing there. Although Denny probably didn't understand the me laughing and asking him, "Are you kidding?" He was right on the money with it, though. So,
you know, I always have a soft spot for developmental leagues like the UFL was, and like we've seen in recent years with the AAF and with the XFL and with the rejoinder of the USFL. And you said something I thought was pretty interesting, is that, you know, because the NFLPA has negotiated so many limits on reps basically for pro players, that I feel, and also someone else mentioned to me something interesting, is that, you know, the college environment now is much less of a developmental environment because the coaches have to win now, right? So they're not quite as predicated on developing players to play professional ball. Do you feel like, you know, we really need like a developmental professional league for guys to serve as a bridge from college to the NFL?
Well, I think it is a great tool to help these guys improve their skill level out of college. The issue becomes the NFL is not interested in secondary leagues.
Yeah, they don't want to fund it.
They're not going to. They did initially with the World League.
Yep.
And they lost their shirt, and there was no really production because of it, you know, as far as players coming back to the league. I think that there has been proof that these secondary leagues, whether it be the USFL when it first started, or the XFL or UFL or whatever, the AA, whatever that was in, there's a lot of players that do have an opportunity to get picked up by NFL teams that actually make the team.
Yeah.
So the NFL just sits back and waits for these kids to come clean and come, you know, finish the season. And if they need them, then they pick them up. But the issue becomes money. You know, people aren't going. Bottom line is, an investor wants to make his money back. It's not, I'm going to, you know, try and be a real good guy and see these guys improve and take a hit financially. It's just not going to work. But, you know, you've got the USFL now going in the second year, and it seems like it's fairly stable. Some good football teams, some good coaches. You got a new league starting this year here.
XFL starting back up, and they brought it, and they're bringing a team to Orlando. That's right.
Yep. So it'll be interesting to see with 2 secondary leagues. Now they're competing at the same time. I mean, you got the USFL and you got the XFL, and there's only so much entertainment dollar to go around. Although there is no other team in this city, or I don't think there's any crossover as far as teams in either league in the cities. Last year, the USFL was all in Birmingham. Supposedly, they're going to their towns that they're respectively play for. So we'll see how that goes. They've got TV rights, which is huge. Yeah, Americans are going to watch football all the time. I don't care what you say. If the game's on, we're flowing it on and watching it. So I think it's great for the players to give them an opportunity to be visible, put some film together for NFL teams to watch, and have an opportunity to live out their dream. So I do think there's a need for it. But again, the NFL has no desire to try and be a part of it financially.
Well, not just players too, but I think coaches as well. And that brings me to my next question, because you had a young 26-year-old running backs coach on your staff in Sacramento named Mike McDaniel.
Yeah.
Who is now the head coach of the Miami Dolphins. Tell me about what you knew. Tell me about the young, wet behind the ears Mike McDaniel that you knew in California.
He's still wet behind the ears. I can remember the first time Denny brought us out to San Diego. Denny lived in San Diego for a staff meeting. Flew us all, the coach's staff, our first year, and I got a chance to meet Mike. And here a guy went to Yale. He was about the size of a peanut, and of course he had a pedigree, having worked with the Texans and been around the Broncos and the Shanahans, and so that part was impressive. But he was a tremendously intelligent guy. I mean, when he talked, it was amazing, and he knew his stuff about football for being such a young coach. He was really, really good. He coached the running backs for us, and left going into my third year to go back to Washington with Kyle, with his father, and but has done an incredible job with the Dolphins. A great guy. Players loved him. Got a tremendous sense of humor. Doesn't take things, not that he doesn't take things serious, it just doesn't show. He lets things roll off his back and go about his business. But he is very, very good with what he does offensively and managing staffs and players based on what I've just seen. I mean, this year watching the Dolphins.
Seems to take his job very seriously, but doesn't take himself overly seriously.
Good analogy. Exactly. Yeah. He's done a tremendous job with Tua, instilling confidence in him that he's the guy. And that really, as a quarterback, is really, really important. You can't be looking over your shoulder every time you make a mistake. And McDaniel has already made that point that he is my guy. And he's played exceptionally well in most of the games. So hopefully he can stay healthy.
So once you send Mike McDaniel off into the sunset, you come back to Central Florida. I remember your press conference when you were hired as the head coach of Trinity Prep, and you've been there for the better part of a decade now. And what led you to decide to, you played in the NFL, you coached in the NFL, you played and coached college. What led you to kind of settle in as a high school coach?
Well, I, my last year in college was at the University of Massachusetts, and 2012, and that was not a great experience for me. I was up there with the 111 team. I got hired as a coordinator and did nothing as far as responsibility as a coordinator, and I had two freshmen that were playing. We had just stepped up to FBS level, and I'd already been through this before, but now we're playing Michigan, and it wasn't a lot of fun.
That's a tough program to succeed at.
So, I went to college on the other side of the state in Boston. We played UMass every year, and they weren't good then, and we weren't very good then. In 2012, so. Had a conversation with the head coach and came home. So the job at Trinity opened up, and I only live across the street, and have been obviously a part of the Trinity thing, coaching at UCF all the time. So I got to know those people over there. So I decided, I'm going to take a shot at this. And, I had tried to be a head coach again in 2012 and thought I had a chance at it, but couldn't get it. So that's why I went to UMass, because I had turned that down. So I said, I'm going to get back in coaching at the high school level and see how it goes. And now 10 years later, I'm still there.
Well, during this time at Trinity Prep, you ended up coming across two brothers with the last name Holler, Alec and Max, who are now both with the Knights, and of course Alec for producing the highlights he's been. What does it mean to you to see the two of them end up going to college at the program you once coached?
It's a unique situation, and I tell you what, it was an honor to have them as players for Trinity, for me to coach them, and then to have the opportunity to be able to watch them just down the street 6 miles is fantastic, especially at a place that I spent most of my life coaching at. So kind of a unique situation, but it's one that has benefited both those kids and the UCF program and myself as a fan. So I can't say enough about the family. He's got mom and dad are phenomenal, and both young men are outstanding character guys that work pretty hard.
Alec Holler has had quite the year and a half for himself. He managed to get on scholarship a year and a half ago, and then this season produced two of arguably the best highlights of the season in the Holler Hop and the Holy Holler. What was your reaction to seeing those plays live for the first time? Because those were ridiculous.
Well, it didn't shock me. I can remember the first time he came on the field. We had already started the season as his junior year, and we were already through 2 games. And I'd seen him as a basketball player, but he came out to practice and he's running routes and he's catching the ball effortlessly. He had great feet, great movement. And I'm just thinking, this guy, what a natural, So catching the football to me for him was something that it was like breathing, So the catches were remarkable in themselves, but it doesn't shock me that he made those catches at that time. I don't think any moment's too big for him. I really don't. He was recruited as a senior, overlooked by BCS schools, mostly FCS schools. Said, Coach, I can play at the BCS level. I go, I know you can, but he goes, I'm going to go to UCF. So I called Byron Lawson and Sean Beckton at the time. They agreed to allow him to be a preferred walk-on. The thing that really impresses me about Alex is his tenacity, his belief in his own ability to get things done. Went there as a preferred walk-on, tore his ACL, and still fought through that injury to not only earn a scholarship, become the tight end for that program, the starting tight end. And a part of that, when he started playing tight end for me, the running of routes seemed to be a very instinctive thing for him. It was the blocking part of it that was different. So being a basketball player, it's a little different when you have to stick your nose in there and knock somebody off the line of scrimmage. And what he's done at UCF is remarkable as far as a blocker is concerned.
Yeah, boxing out doesn't work on the gridiron.
No.
You mentioned that at Trinity, you've had to find players to be on your team with Trinity. Is that right? You mentioned that earlier.
Well, we're always trying to persuade kids that go to school there. We can't recruit. We don't do any of that. It's just trying to get the kids that are already there playing other sports to play.
So you mentioned that it was in the middle of his junior season that he started playing for you guys. So what is it like for you to be able to find a talent like that at that sort of time?
Well, it came at a phenomenal time. I mean, we had all the pieces in place except for that position. And I use Alec a lot like Malzahn and everybody else does. He's a move guy for me. He's not a guy that's going to stick his hand in the ground. He's 6'5", 260 pounds, come off and knock you off the ball. So he was perfect for what we did. And I think that was part of the reason why I was attracted at UCF. But getting him the third game of the year, I think he caught 4 or 5 balls against Episcopal up in Jacksonville, did a phenomenal job, had a great junior year, but he was still off the radar as a recruit, and then had an incredible senior year. But to get him when I did is all thankful to his brother. His brother's the one that talked him into playing, Max, his younger brother. It wasn't any coach. I watched him play basketball, and he didn't want to have anything to do with football. And all of a sudden, he shows up for practice one day. This is great.
And now he's going to be playing for his 6th season next year at UCF. You mentioned that you actually talked with Alec about that decision, right?
I certainly did. His father and he called me about what I thought, and so I gave him some advice about the information he needs to make the decision, to make the proper decision for his own career. And, Alec is a hard-working guy. He's not the biggest as far as weight's concerned, although he does things incredibly well. I don't know that the NFL scouts had him on their radar. My first thing was I said, listen, you've got to get somebody and get information from scouts that have evaluated you and judge from their opinion about your draftability and where you fall. And he did that and got the information. He shared it with me. I talked to his father about it, and he made the right choice, without a doubt, for himself and for UCF. I think that he'll have an opportunity to go in the National Football League and do very, very well. Whether it's a move tight end, special teams guy, he'll have an opportunity to live out his dream.
And he'll be playing for UCF when they make their way into the Big 12 conference. And we're going to wrap up here in a second, but I got to ask you, Coach, when you look at where UCF is now on the, having just played their final season in the American Athletic Conference, from where the program was when you started to where it's going, how do you feel about it? How do you think about it?
I think this was predicted a long time ago. I made a statement. I may have made it to Alan Smocky.
I remember Alan.
Or Mike Bianchi. I forget what year it was. It may have been 2003 or 2002. I still have the newspaper article. It was the USA Today or something. I said, this football team will win a national championship. I gave the reasons. I said, Florida State, Miami have all won it. We are in the best geographical location, economical location. It's got everything working for it, and there's not a reason. I said, I didn't say we're going to win it next year. It may be 20 years, but they will have an opportunity to play for the national championship sometime. I think that moving into the Big 12 obviously gives them a chance to accomplish that, and there is no reason why they can't get to that point. The money that's been dumped into that program, the facilities, the size of the school. I mean, I guess they're turning kids away now that are trying to get accepted into UCF. I mean, when I was there were 14,000 students. Now it's about 160. So,
yeah, it seems like it's gone up about tenfold.
I don't recognize campus, so I don't drive up there very often, but they've got everything in place that any student athlete, the top ones, would love to be a part of. And with this portal now, you can get rich fast. You get a couple guys that fit in. Oh my gosh, it's just remarkable. Now you can lose some guys too, as we've seen with UCF, but it's going to be across the board. You're going to get your guys in, and so they're going to have an opportunity. I think they'll do extremely well. Looking forward to it. But you asked the question. I saw this a long time ago coming. So I'm very.
How do you view your place in the program's history?
Well, I think that I had a positive effect on the growth of the program with the players. I was blessed by the Lord to have a chance to be there that long and work with a great group of coaches, men, and coach some incredible young student athletes. So I think that I have gratification in knowing that I was a part of building the program with a group of guys that probably don't get the credit for it. Like you said, it's a younger generation now that's involved with UCF that doesn't really understand the past, or maybe not embrace it as much. But when you've seen things through my eyes from when it first started up in '85, when I got there, obviously Don Jonas did a remarkable job with not having a whole lot when he started that program as the first coach. And all those guys prior to me getting there had a part of it. But that program's where it's at because of the guys' sacrifice that they made to make something that was nothing special
Yeah. And it's remarkable when you think about the only school in what will be eventually the eventually the Power Five that has played football at every level of the NCAA, Division 3, 2, 1AA, FCS, FBS, and now heading into a Power 5 conference. And Coach, I can speak certainly personally, and I know I speak for a lot of people that that I am thankful for the role that you played in developing UCF into what it is, and also in developing people like me, because I was a young Cubs student reporter, showing up to press conferences when you were a head coach and asking stupid questions. And I'm sure that, maybe that hasn't changed all that much over the years, but I'm thankful for the opportunities that you gave me and all of our friends, Eric Lopez and Matt Dunaway and Matt Eitel and a number of other guys who've had successful careers who didn't play for you but interacted with you, and we're really thankful for that because you did treat us like we were like we were one of our own, and we felt, and you gave us a lot of confidence. And I think that like you've mentioned, when it talks about playing, it's not just in terms of playing sports, it's also in terms of everything. Confidence is just a tremendous is, I think, an underappreciated factor in learning how to be good at anything. And I'm thankful for that.
Well, I thank you, Jeff, for all you do. You're a mouthpiece for the programs, the athletic programs there, and you do a remarkable job of representing UCF and the great things that are going on, and doing the research and letting people know about, the past and what's going on, and getting people on that can share their experiences. So I thank you for your dedication to the school, which has been substantial. I mean, that's a long time. You've been there.
I know.
You're like Mark Davis.
Mark has been there way longer than me. He's got some really good stories. I know. I feel like I'm still a relative latecomer. I only got 1 year of 1A independent football under my belt. You guys have a lot more.
He's a great person. Another one that is special. But representing UCF is a big deal, and doing it in a positive way. And I know as you move down the road in the Big 12, you guys are going to have a blast. I think it'll be something special.
Well, we're looking forward to it, Coach. Thank you so much. That means a lot to hear from you. And hey, when are we going to get you out to another game here? How often do you come out?
Well, I was talking to Bryson this week a little bit. The last game I was at, my son was on the team playing quarterback.
Right, Garrett. Yep.
Yeah. And I think it was South Carolina State. And, as the season went on, he and I talked about, putting film together so I could get out of there, because it was apparent that McKenzie was going to be the guy. So that was the last game. I don't know, 2000 and, I don't know.
16, 17?
Yep.
All right. That's too long, Coach. We got to get you back home. We got Dante back home. We got to get you back home here too, to come hang with us and see what you have been certainly no small part in building here at UCF. We thank you for that, and we thank you for we went super long, but you know what? This is thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. I don't talk about this stuff ever, so to have the opportunity to talk with you and Bryson and share what I do remember from those days, someone that does care like yourself is really, really important to me. So it was very special for me also.
You got it, Coach. Coach Mike Kruczek at Trinity Prep, former UCF head coach. Merry Christmas, Coach. Happy New Year, and we'll see you back here on campus pretty soon, okay?
All right. Merry Christmas, and have a blessed holiday season.
Wow, that was awesome. Thanks to Coach Kruczek. Thanks to you, Bryson, for, again, the hard work that you put together getting this done. And, I mean, we could have gone for another hour and a half. With all this stuff. I feel I tell you, later that day I came back, I was like, shoot, I should have asked him about this. Shoot, I should have asked him about that. Maybe we'll get him on again one time to kind of fill in the blanks that I forgot to ask him about. But when you look back at somebody who, I think was instrumental in laying that concrete foundation for UCF to become a the program that it is and will be. You can't get through the first paragraph without talking about Mike Kruczek. And I think that's something that I hope, older UCF fans like me understand. I do hope that, newer UCF fans also, the way that I see, it's funny. Like, I feel like the way that other programs, almost indoctrinate like younger, newer fans into like the history of, their programs, like places like Michigan and Florida State and Notre Dame, like, if you're a Notre Dame student right now, you know who Newt Rockne is, right? You know who Lou Holtz is. You know who Paul Horning is, and so on and so forth. Jerome Bettis, at Notre Dame and whatnot. You go to Michigan, you know who Bo Schembechler is, and who, all those great players are. Charles Woodson, et cetera. And I feel like we at UCF, we are approaching the point as a program where we need to talk more about those kinds of, those figures in our program's history, because we have the benefit of knowing that, a lot of them are still, fortunately, a lot of them are still with us today. And we can talk at length with them. And Coach Kruczek is certainly no exception to that. We lost Gene McDowell a couple years ago. But the players, the coaches who coach with him, a lot of them, some figures are still around the program today, like Manny Messinger. And, I hope that we also begin to appreciate, our legacy as a football program, and the hard work that went into it. Because like I told Coach Kruczek, no other program in the power conferences in FBS has had any time as a Division III, Division II, Division I FCS, Division I FBS program. UCF is the first one to do that. So there's a lot of hard work went into building what we see now and what we will see in the coming months as UCF transitions into the Big 12.
Yep, started from the bottom and now we're here. I do want to give a quick shout out to David Langdon, the athletic director at Trinity Prep, who helped facilitate contact between me and Coach Kruczek, because I had initially actually tried to reach out for him to talk about Alec Holler during the football season, but as understandably, Coach Kruczek was a little busy at the time coaching with them. But now that was as the high school football season was over, reaching out to him and he helped connect us. So thank you very much to him for helping his role in helping make this possible. And I completely agree with you. I mean, one thing that UCF can never have, unlike other Power 5 things, is centuries long history. At least not for a long time. UCF isn't going to have that. And so I think but I think in some ways that is a blessing in a way that allows us to talk to people like Coach Kruczek. And now Dante Culpepper is back in the fold again. And to see some of these legendary figures from early on from pretty early on in the program's days, and be able to actually speak with them and to have them, speak with the team now is honestly amazing to see. And it was amazing to hear from Coach Kruczek about that time. And I think as we have these interviews, I really hope that this interview is watched by a lot of people and people kind of save it somewhere, because it's not, all these people are not going to be around forever. And so to have these preserved, to kind of have that knowledge of who these people were that helped make the program what it is invaluable. And I'm sure that, had the technology been available, further back, I'm sure other schools would have done something like this. And I think that's the big advantage of having a football program start as kind of later on as UCF's has. So especially from me, thank you, Coach Kruczek. I appreciate the time that you spent with us. And like Jeff said, hopefully we might be able to have you on again. He's been very generous with his time. Really appreciate that. And so Yeah, that was a great day. I'm glad that you guys were able to hear that.
Yeah, thanks to Coach Cruz, and we appreciate it. And we appreciate you, as always, listening to all the content that we put out here on this podcast and on our website as well. It's been, it is a privilege to bring it to you, and we appreciate your feedback as well. Make sure you hit us up. Let us know what you think. If there's somebody else that you think that we should talk to on one of these, on one of these podcasts, let us know. We always try to do it. We kind of have our bucket list, right? Of people we want to talk to. And
Anthony Milton was on at the beginning of the year,
right? We had KZ. We've had guys like Trey Neal on, and but send us your bucket list and let us know who you want us to try and have on the show. So we always appreciate you, as always. So for Bryson Turner, for all of us here at Black and Gold Banneret, we hope you enjoyed this incredible show. Thanks again to Coach Kruczek, and from all of us here at Black and Gold Banneret, we wish you a happy, healthy, safe, and joyous holiday season. Whatever you may celebrate, we all charge on together. All the best, and we will see you on our next show.